I just did a lesson for a basic way to play Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash. And I was looking around on YouTube and I found this cool fingerpicking way to do it. So I'm going to put a link to that video where the guy's doing it. But like if I was teaching this to my students, that video would be too hard for them, so I figured I would do kind of a breakdown of it. But check out their video because I don't just want to rip them off. Also, they have a link to their tab they're using, so I'll put a link to that in the description of this video. And this is what I would make my students do. So first of all, like if you pull it up, it looks like this, and I wrote a bunch of stuff on it. This is how I would teach it to my students. So at the end of this video, I'll like hold this up and you could copy this. So I would actually make them print this out and circle all this information. The next thing I would do, like before we started playing it, I would make sure they understood these concepts. So 2/4 means that there's 2 beats per measure. 1/4 is 1 beat per measure. And then I would make sure that they understand these basic rhythms. So we got like quarter notes, you count as 1. Eighth notes, you go 1 and 16th notes, 1 and a. I'll make sure those are in the frame. So quarter note, 1. So you just count 1, 1 and for these eighth notes, and this is the way you write it for like strumming. And then 16th notes, you would do 1 and a. And so you just write it different, like the top way with the notes is how you would write it on staff. But when you do tab, you have to do it like this. So these represent eighth notes. This should have just been a line straight up and down. I kind of messed it up. With the single line is eighth notes, so it kind of like it's supposed to look like that. It's supposed to copy like when you connect eighth notes, it looks like that. So this is how you do it. And 16th notes, there's 2 lines, so you do it like that. So 1, 1 and, 1 E and a, and I write the ands like that. Sometimes I do like a plus. So I would look at their video real quick, or you can just watch, see how I do it. And I'm going to count it. So make sure you pull this up. I'll have it in the description here. And look at it. And at the end of this video, I'll just hold this up for a while so people could copy down what I wrote. But notice I would make my students do a couple things. I would make them circle the time signature changes in the beginning from 2/4 to 1/4. And I would make them actually write all the rhythm because it's super easy to be lazy about it and just kind of cheat and sort of half do it. And I would make them the orange is circling the bass notes, and that's where I'm going to use my thumb. So I'll hold this up briefly here, and I would print this out. So see, there's a lot of 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 1 and, 1 E and, 1 and a, 2 E and a, 1 and a. It keeps going. So this is a really like awesome song for beginner finger pickers, and it sounds cool. So I'll play it real quick. So you definitely want to print this up, this chart. It's going to give me kind of a headache to say all these notes, but I would also make my students say them out loud. So if you don't actually say the rhythm out loud, again, it's just easy to cheat and just kind of like, oh, that measure, I don't really want to count it. But the only way to learn rhythm, and like the way I learned to actually be precise about it, is to say it out loud. So you want to use your thumb only on those orange notes I circled, which is usually the first beat of the 1 and the first beat of the 2. And again, I'll hold it up at the end if you want to copy down how I wrote it. So you start out with a G chord. It's going to go like this. It's going to go 1 and 2 E and then goes to C. 1 and 1 and 2 E and then thumb again. 1 and 2 E and 1 and whew, it is hard to say it out loud while you're thinking. So let me do it one more time from the beginning. 1 and 2 E and it's a G chord. 1 and 2 E and 1 and 2 E and you stay on G, but you get rid of your pinky now. So this is the 5th measure, first measure on the 2nd line. 1 and 2 E and 1 and that's a little D7 chord. So this is sixth measure, 1 and 2 E and then the first ending. So this is something else I'd make my students circle, because sometimes endings can throw people off. See the little, see this like first ending, and then down here there's second ending. So there's first ending right there. So the first time through you do that, and then there's the repeats. See the little repeat dots, and then you go the next time you would skip first ending and go to second ending. So right now I'm on first ending. So it's a G chord, 1 and 2 E and then you go back to the beginning. So back to G, the first measure, 1 and 2 E and 1 and 2 E and 1 and 2 E and fifth measure, 1 and 2 E and little D7, 1 and 2 E and second ending you go thumb only. So it's 1 and 2 and then after second ending you need to do like, there's two ways to do this. You can either do D like this and then switch to this real quick. I actually do that a lot, so this finger's not down right now. To grab this A note, or like the guy in his video shows, you can bar this and just stretch over, and that makes a lot more sense. And also there's something going on here if you look carefully. Like a lot of my students would miss this. If you look at where this starts right after second ending, the bass notes are like alternating. Like this is D, then the next bass note is A. So it's like it's switching from D to A. You gotta look kind of carefully. A lot of my students would just totally miss that. It's alternating. It alternates. And then we get to the C chord over here. It's also alternating. So 3 to 2. So see the bass that I circled in orange? It's like alternating, so you gotta watch that. And that's a common style for like country music. So I'm going to keep going from after the second measure, and I'm going to do it with the bar. So I'm barring all three of these notes. The middle finger has to be on D to make D major. You stretch your pinky over to 5. So it's going to be like 1 and 2. See, thumb has to go down. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and so I'll do that again. That's the first two measures after the second ending. 1 and 2 and pinky 8, 1 and 2 and I would make my students repeat these two measures a lot because thumb has to go. So 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and it's easier to do this when you don't have to say it all. But C major, the next one, you do a C chord, but you put your pinky up here on G. And that's still a C chord, because C is C, E, G are the notes. So 1 and 2 E and 1 and 2 E and then you go to a G chord, first ending, but you lift your pinky up. So 1 and, whoops, 1 and 2 E and, so that's kind of tricky too, because pinky needs to be on D. 1 and 2 E and then you go back to right after the first second ending. So this could also be confusing for people, because you want to make sure, we already went through that second ending right there, then we started this new section of the song, and when we get to this first ending, then we go back to these double dots, not to the very beginning of the song. So you got to make sure you understand the concept of first ending, second ending, and where the double dots are. So we're already in this section of the song now, so we do first ending, and we have these double dots, so we go back to those double dots. And the second time through, we skip this ending. So I'm going to repeat this, and then jump past the first ending to the second ending. So you really need to print this out, or have this open, this PDF, to understand what I'm talking about, because it's too complicated to just explain completely through video. So now I'm back to the beginning of this part. 1 and 2 and 1 and a 2 and a pinky up on C chord, 1 and a 2 E, and now I go to second ending, 1 and a 2 E, and then 1 and a 2 and 1 and 2 E, and then the measure 17, 1 E and 2. That's kind of tricky. It's a C chord, but you gotta get your middle finger on A. So this is measure 17, 1 E and 2 and 1 and 2 E and 1 and this is tricky too. You gotta do middle finger on A here, second fret, and then you gotta do your thumb on A, and then stretch over your pinky to fourth fret. 2 and 1 and 2 E and then strum. So I'm gonna do it from measure 17 one more time. 1 E and 2 and 1 and 2 E and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 E and strum. It's pretty hard to do that saying out loud all that stuff, but watch the other guy's video because he just plays it, but that would be too hard for most of my students to figure out. So real quick, I'll hold this up. Actually, I'm going to show one last thing, and I'm going to hold it up for the rest of the time. What I like to do, because I used to do a lot of finger picking, but nowadays I kind of prefer to learn how to do more stuff with the pick. For some reason, I just went away from finger picking. And so what I do, once I learn a finger picking song, I like to figure it out with the pick. So you could just go. Second ending. It's a little sloppy, but I don't know why. I just like to learn stuff this way. What I'm doing is like strumming only up to the highest note. So it's like a hard skill. Like I try to teach my more advanced students how to do it. You really just have to hear it in your head, and like a lot of times once you've finger picked it enough, and then just start to strum up to the highest note. So it's like here I'm going strum up to D, up to F sharp, up to A, up to G. So it's like, it sounds really cool though, I think, to get good at that style, because then you can kind of do more solo stuff. It sounds a little fuller than finger picking. It sounds less classical. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds, like some of that precision from finger picking, but also more like the rhythmic style, because you could be like, so you can kind of blend it and like steal ideas from the finger picking. So I'm just going to hold this up now for people who want to copy this down. I think I messed up in one spot. Yeah, right here I messed up. So I'm just going to hold it up, and you can print this out and copy this if you want. So there's the top part, so you can just pause it, copy it. This is exactly what I make my students do. I might actually teach them this song, some of the ones who are more intermediate. Then I'll scroll it up. Paper. Feels weird to do anything on paper these days. So you can copy that. And notice I circled all like the orange and the blue. And I make them use colors a lot because it's so easy to like go brain dead when you're looking at all this stuff. After a while, like in a way, like once you get more advanced with music, you kind of see this kind of stuff in your head, like you know what to focus on. So the color is kind of like the important things that you kind of would highlight in your mind as a musician. So I don't know, maybe I can get the whole thing up here. There it is. So again, check out the guy playing it. He does a really good job. And that's it. Hope this was helpful. Alright, bye.